On Wednesday, a soccer referee showed a red card. By Sunday, a president had made it disappear. In between, one phone call went from the White House to the president of FIFA, soccer's global governing body. 24 hours before kickoff, FIFA did something it had not done in over 60 years. It let a player serve a red card suspension by not serving it at all. This is not a story about soccer. It's a story about what happens to a rule the moment the right person picks up the phone. Because the rulebook didn't change. The referee wasn't wrong. Nothing on the field was in dispute. What changed was who was allowed to reach into the machine and how fast the machine moved for him. Start with the facts, because they're not in question. In the round of 32, the United States beat Bosnia and Herzegovina 2-0. In the 64th minute, the American striker Balogun lost his balance in a challenge and came down studs first on a defender's ankle. The referee reviewed it and showed a straight red. For anyone who doesn't follow the sport, this is close to the most serious call a referee can make. The category is called serious foul play, and it turns on three things: whether the contact was a stamp, how much force was behind it, and whether it endangered the opponent's safety. Studs onto an ankle checks all three. On the rulebook, the card was sound, and a straight red carries an automatic one-match ban. This is one of the oldest, hardest lines in the sport. A dangerous play costs you the next game, and it costs everyone the same. The whole point of making it automatic is to take judgment out of it. No committee, no lobbying, no exceptions. That rule has held at World Cups for decades. And it had already been applied at this very tournament. Other players had been sent off in earlier rounds, and every one of them served the ban. That's part of what would make this case stand out. The same rule had just been enforced on everyone else, without exception. So the math was simple. The Americans' next game was the round of 16 against Belgium. Balogun was out. Then the story stopped following the rulebook. According to the Associated Press, the White House contacted FIFA directly. President Trump called FIFA President Gianni Infantino on the day of the red card and asked him to review it. On Sunday, 24 hours before kickoff, FIFA's disciplinary committee issued a statement. Citing Article 27 of its own disciplinary code, it suspended the suspension for a probationary period of 1 year. Translated, as long as Balogun doesn't commit another serious foul in the next 12 months, the ban is never served. He plays against Belgium. Trump then posted on his own platform, "Thank you to FIFA for doing what was right and reversing a great injustice." Belgium's Football Association said it was astonished and that the decision broke FIFA's own written rules. It was, by most accounts, the first time since 1962 that a World Cup red card did not cost a player his next match. Here's the part that matters. Article 27 is real. It's legal. It's written into the code in black and white. It's a clemency clause. The committee can suspend a punishment, in full or in part, and put the player on probation instead. Normally, it's used before a tournament starts, on cases where the facts are genuinely in dispute, to give a player an observation period. And notice what it does, and what it doesn't. It didn't overturn the red card. FIFA never said the referee got it wrong. The card still stands in the record. Only the consequence was quietly switched off. The offense stays. The price disappears. So the problem was never the tool. The problem is whose hand reached for it, and when. And look at the design of this particular clemency. It punishes the future and forgives the present. Don't reoffend for 1 year sounds like a condition. For a tournament that comes once every 4 years, it's close to nothing. Balogun's next competitive match at this level might not come for years. So the practical effect of the ruling is a single word: nothing. The suspension exists on paper and evaporates in reality. And there's a person this erases. The defender who took the studs to the ankle. His team was already knocked out and on the way home, which is what makes the probation so hollow. Probation is supposed to protect future opponents from a repeat. But there was never going to be a next opponent for this suspension to shield. The one player who was actually fouled is already going home. The punishment protected no one, and now it costs no one. Once the red card is placed on probation, That tackle, in the ledger of the game's discipline, is treated as if it barely happened. The one acknowledgement the rules owed him gets suspended too. Now, in fairness, there's a real counter-argument. Clemency wasn't invented for this player. Last November, Cristiano Ronaldo was sent off in a qualifier and banned for 3 games. FIFA deferred 2 of them on probation, and he made his World Cup opener. And it wasn't only him. Earlier this year, other players had suspensions deferred through the same kind of mechanism. So when the American side says there's precedent, that's true. The clause has been used before, and not only for one country. But there's a line running through all of it that no one crosses. Those earlier cases went through the process before the tournament. A federation files paperwork. A committee meets. It moves step by step on its own calendar. This one happened mid-tournament. A phone call from the White House went straight into the office of FIFA's president, and 24 hours later, the rule bent. 2 things set it apart: the direction and the speed. The request didn't rise up through a federation's legal department. It came down from a head of state, straight to the top of the organization. And it didn't take weeks of filings. It took a day. Precedent tells you a door exists. It doesn't tell you a president can walk through it in an afternoon. Run the thought experiment. Take out the call. What does the normal path look like? The federation submits an appeal and video. The committee hears it on schedule. The tournament rolls forward, game by game, and by the time the case is resolved, that round of 16 match is long over. Balogun sits it out. That's the road every team and every star has walked for decades. The fast lane isn't imaginary. It's just that the window it opens onto isn't in Zurich. It's in Washington. And now the part that turns this from a sports controversy into something bigger. FIFA's own statutes contain an iron rule. Governments are not allowed to interfere in football. That rule exists for a reason. FIFA's entire authority rests on one claim: that the game is governed by the game, not by whoever happens to hold power in a given country. Keep politicians out, and a federation in a dictatorship answers to the same rulebook as one in a democracy. That's the theory the whole institution is built on. And this isn't a slogan. FIFA enforces it. When national governments have reached into their own football federations, FIFA has suspended those federations from international play. Whole national teams and clubs frozen out. Nigeria, Kuwait, Indonesia. The list is long. Kuwait spent years locked out, its players unable to compete under their own flag, over a law the government would not change. When a state touches its own football body, the punishment has been swift and heavy. So hold the 2 cases side by side. A government touches its own federation, banned. A president phones the president of FIFA himself, Clemency. Same statute, 2 faces, and look at the asymmetry. A sports ministry adjusting its own country's federation gets the whole nation thrown out. A head of state reaching across a border into FIFA's own highest office to change a decision that was already made gets a favorable ruling in 24 hours. The kind of interference FIFA punishes hardest is the small domestic kind. The kind it just accommodated is the largest kind there is. And it didn't come out of nowhere. This is a governing body that has spent years growing close to this particular seat of power. Its president sat in the crowd at the presidential inauguration. The last edition of FIFA's Showcase Club tournament was staged across the United States, and after it, a replica of the trophy ended up on display in the Oval Office. When an organization holds its biggest events in your country and courts your leadership, the leverage only runs one way. So when the call came, the surprise wasn't that FIFA listened. The surprise was that it did it out loud, by rewriting a red card in public where everyone could see. This is the visible hand. Not a market moved by supply and demand, but a rulebook moved by proximity to power. The independence of the institution holds, right up until the moment power that matters picks up the phone. To see where this road ends, look at the country that runs its football through the state most completely of all: China. There, football isn't governed at arm's length from the government. The National Federation sits under a state sports bureaucracy, and the people who run the game are, in effect, state officials. For a decade, the leadership poured money into the sport as a matter of national pride. top down, by command. Here's what that produced. Not a stronger team. The men's national side has stayed near the bottom, missing one World Cup after another despite all the spending. What it produced was capture. In the last 2 years, an anti-corruption sweep tore through the sport. The former national team coach was sentenced to 20 years in prison for taking and paying bribes, including bribes to land the job and to fix league matches. The head of the Football Association went down with him, along with a long line of officials. That's what football looks like when the state doesn't just phone in, when it owns the whole thing. Not independence bent by a single call, but independence that never existed. So yes, measured against that, an American president making one phone call is a far lighter touch. Nobody nationalized the game. One call bent one rule, once, out in the open. But better than the most captured football system on earth is not a standard any healthy institution should be reaching for. The point of the red line was never to be less corrupt than the worst offender in the world. It was to hold the line at all, a rule that only has to beat, that one has already surrendered most of the game. Step back and ask what any of us are buying when we watch a match at all. Not just the goals. We're buying one promise, that everyone on the field is playing by the same rules and that the rules don't answer to anyone off it. Discount that promise, and the scoreline still happens. But it comes with an asterisk. However good the game is, it carries a watermark. Think about the things sport polices hardest: match fixing, doping. It comes down on them without mercy because they corrupt the result from the inside. A rule bent by a phone call is the same corruption, just from the top instead of the shadows. The threat to the game was never that Balogun played. It's that everyone now knows the outcome can be reached. Because here's how institutions actually lose their authority. It's rarely by abolishing the rules. It's by quietly proving the rules are negotiable, for the people who can reach the right office. The visible hand doesn't have to break the rule. It only has to show, once, that the rule will flex. After that, everyone watches the next close call, wondering whose phone is about to ring. And the lesson doesn't stay in soccer. Every rules-based body that saw this, every league, every regulator, every institution that likes to call itself independent, just watched a 60-year rule bend in a day for the right caller. They all learned the same thing. Independence is a posture, until power decides to test it. The referee will still blow the whistle on Monday. The players will still run. But a rule that stood for 60 years just learned that it has a price, and everyone now knows the number.